dinner.
Yo, everyone, welcome back. Brand new Techish in the building. We are back. And it's been a very uneventful time. Actually, let me intro who the hell I am. So I'm Michael, in case you've forgotten. I'm the CEO of Pocket and Pocket Jobs, and I'm joined with
Abadesi of Hustle Crew here.
So it's been a very quiet time since we've been gone away. Like nothing's really happened.
Nothing's
The world hasn't changed.
How boring.
Oh man, it's crazy. As in, literally, the world almost changed by a few millimeters, right? I think give or take a few millimeters, we were about to be in a very different world. What was your thoughts when you saw what was going down, when you heard about it?
When the Orange Man almost became a martyr?
Basically.
Yeah, that was pretty terrifying. Obviously, I don't condone violence in any form, but I feel in the wake of everything that's been happening with Biden and the questions about his age and ability to lead, that event did not help the cause one bit. I feel like, it made him more of a hero, and the imagery around it, how the press gobbled it up as a way to avoid talking about anything else important that happened that day, like Israeli strikes on Gaza. I don't know. I'm not feeling too hopeful about November. How about you?
Yeah, I think, the election to me is wrapped up. As soon as I saw that picture of him going like that, I was like, yeah, it's done. There's certain moments in history where you're like, yeah, it's over.
Lord.
Especially when you got Biden, who's basically a walking zombie. I'm going to keep that real in it. Like, obviously, I just feel like with Biden, it's the ego on the man to not fall back. Maybe you get to such a level of cognitive decline that you're not even aware of how much you've declined, so you can't see it. But it's down. Surely your family members, those who love you, are going to step in. But I think his family are very much of the thought process that we're good with him as president. Like we're getting.
It's like African relevant despots that are going in. Kagame's going in for his fourth term or something like that. Rwanda,
I want to visit Rwanda. I'm not trying to say nothing about Kagame in it.
No, I'm just saying, like, people find it hard to let go of the throne.
Yeah, it's true, 100%. So when I saw this, I was like, yeah, it's wrapped up. But I think we were very close to. I don't want to say it, but a civil war in the US. I mean, if he had really been killed, I don't think it would have been peaceful. It might not have been to that extent of a war, but definitely would have been civil unrest. That would have made BLM look like nothing. And these people are armed. They would have walked the streets, and I would really have feared for other Democratic politicians and et cetera, because we saw with Jan 6 that the intention was to go and hurt politicians.
Absolutely.
So when this happened, when their guy and their martyr is now officially a martyr.
Yeah. But that's his MO. His MO is inciting violence. When they go looting, we go shooting. Yeah. Like, this is his whole thing. One of the first things, what drugs are you on that when you've just survived an assassination attempt, the first thing you say is fight? Yeah. Like, you're completely
I'll give him a blight for that, because it's like you are not probably with it super duper. Like, because if it was me, I'm on the ground like, hey, let me get out of here, please. Let me go home, please.
How does inciting further violence in the face of such horrific violence make sense? And I think that's the bit that just I find so terrifying. And his whole vibe has been, to me, like very like Neanderthal caveman style of conflict. Like, let's appeal to the most basic part of the human brain and get people to, get violent with each other. And I just think it's really sad, from the insurrection like to this. And, posting a photo on Twitter and being like, this is like the hardest photo of all time. I really liked how Arlen Hamilton of Backstage Capital posted the photo of the first black girl to enter a segregated school in America, because it's like, well, you did survive, and you're, an incredibly privileged person surrounded by Secret Service agents. Like, I don't know, in the face of the inequalities, the fentanyl epidemic, all kinds of atrocities happening in America, to call yourself the hardest person in America in that moment in time feels a bit misguided.
And apparently the whole situation is the fault of DEI again. So everything, anytime something remotely bad happens, it's like DEI. The Boeing plane crashes, DEI pilot. So apparently the Secret Service agents who, we don't know the full facts. There's going to be an investigation, but it probably does look like there was some malpractice in terms of like how they allowed him to be so open and vulnerable. Yes. But what a lot of, Neanderthals and just dummies were looking at were like, oh wow, there's women there, basically. They're women Secret Service agents. Therefore, the president wasn't protected. Totally. How do you feel about that?
I just think it's crazy, because as soon as a woman in a position of power goes through something negative, like company performance or whatever, everyone starts saying it's because of their gender. Right. But when incompetent men remain in positions of power, it's never to do with them. And no one's out there calling, Biden the patriarchy hire or the privilege hire. And now Cheetle, as the first woman to hold like the role leading Secret Service, has a snafu. It's like, oh my God, it's because, she's only in job because she's a woman. She's incompetent. She's unqualified. And it just reeks of misogyny and sexism. It's such a low blow. It's so lame and so pathetic. Like, then I could point to any man and be like, meritocracy no longer applies for you. You're just in that role because you have a penis.
Yeah, I think I'll look forward to the investigation. I think they're doing like a congressional whatever investigation, because I think they're blaming the Secret Service agents are blaming the police, because I think they were like, oh, you guys were meant to have that covered.
Classic finger pointing fiasco.
Let's see in it. I mean, listen, she very well may be at fault, but it's not the fault of her gender. It's just the fault that she may be incompetent. Like, why do we have to draw for like her bodily characteristics to determine, you know, is she good at her job or not? If she messed up, she messed up. It's okay, but it's to do with the fact that, you know, she might not be good at her job. It has nothing to do with her sex.
It's like oversimplifying a far more complex issue in a country that's already so divided over gender wars, ideological wars, gender stereotype wars. Look at how the Supreme Court is completely attacking women's rights, reproductive rights. I think the really sad thing about DEI, it's a bit like AI in tech news. It's just a guaranteed clickbait, rage bait term. You throw 100%. DEI in something, and whether you're pro DEI or anti DEI, whatever DEI even means now, you're going to click it. Right. You're going to read it. And so I think people are using DEI as a means to gain attention. It doesn't matter what the conversation is actually about, but DEI is the hook that's going to get you in.
Yeah, it's sort of taking the place of political correctness, because when I grew up, that was the phrase everyone was always politically correct.
Politically correct, gone too far.
Don't make me say fire person. I want to say fire man. Like, that's literally what I grew up with. And now this is basically this new word, which now, regardless of what it really is now taking, you know, getting involved in every conversation when, you know, they're saying that Kamala Harris would be the first DEI president. It's
what
like,
does that even mean?
It's like, what does it even mean? Sometimes it feels like it's the N-word on a slide. DEI president, or, you know, like, it's like, come on.
It's like something bad, right? Like, they're just trying to take this word and make it bad. And it's just so fascinating because it's happening with so many movements that challenge the status quo. Any movement that, like, challenges patriarchy. There was a time where being called a feminist was a dirty word, like, ooh. And then there was a time where being called a hippie was a dirty word, because that's like pro-environment and anti-exploitative capitalism. Tree hugger. It's like, you know, the absolute greed and honestly the fear of members of dominant social groups to hold on to that power, to cling on to that power, forces them to weaponize any term that's suddenly being hurled against them. And the fact that people are going so hard on DEI just shows me how real the progress is, because you must be so afraid of the changing of the guards if you are literally doing everything you can to hold on to what you've got.
100%. So let's quickly pivot in the same way that tech has now pivoted from being primarily democratic leaning. Growing up in the tech industry, it was very much Obama, you know, it was Clinton, it was Obama. It was like, we're the pro-business, but, you know, socially liberal guys, so we're going for the Democrats,
making the world a better place.
Basically, yes, we can hope and change and changing the world. And then basically now a lot of tech luminaries have basically come out for Trump. So we've got Andreessen Horowitz and Mark have come out and basically said they're endorsing Trump. Elon's come out saying that he's giving $45 million a month to Trump.
Can he afford that?
He can afford that.
Okay.
Yeah. And then Bill Ackman, who's not tech, but he's kind of business influencer guy, financier. He's basically come out and endorsed Trump as well. I actually sat there and listened to a podcast with Mark Andreessen and Ben Horowitz where they explained their decision. Yeah. Obviously on double speed, innit? But like, so I was just like, hear this, innit? And their thesis was, it was informative in the sense that obviously their priority is the money. Let's keep it real.
Yeah.
They don't care.
They're investors for a reason.
They're investors for a reason. Yeah. And obviously they couldn't care less probably about the whole abortion thing, any sort of, you know, social issues. They're prioritizing their money. And what they were saying is how for crypto, Biden administration is completely clamping down on it. Like, you know, they're sending cease and desist letters to their startups. They're not being clear about what the actual regulation is. They're basically being really hard on that. Then also with AI, they were saying how they were also threatening regulation with AI when we don't really know what this is right now. Yeah. Let's regulate once we have something. Okay, this is dangerous, regulate that. Not at the inception stage, basically, right? So they were not happy with that. The third thing, which is the crucial thing, was that Biden has threatened or basically indicated that he will do a tax on unrealized gains. So as an example, it's a big deal, you know. Yeah. For example, think about this now. You have a startup, you raised 3 million, your startup is now valued at 5 million, but you haven't sold any of your shares. You're not even liquid. You can't even sell. Yeah. Biden administration says to you, actually, it's an unrealized gain. We need 2%. Somehow you're going to have to raise that 2% and sell, you know, maybe that's like a couple $100 grand, 300 grand, 400 grand, right? And they were making the argument that if you make startups do that and you make investors do that, after a 10-year period, your total holding is gone. Yeah. So I think the tax would have been like 10, 20% or something like that. Now, they were saying that you've just destroyed VC and startups in that way. Therefore, we cannot vote for you, basically, right?
Yeah.
What's your initial thinking of that? Because I think we are so used to saying Trump is an idiot, Trump is wrong, but we're not also saying that actually maybe Biden's administration hasn't been that smart on some of these key issues, and it doesn't seem like, because to me, he might not be at the wheel. I don't think he is at the wheel. He can't be at the wheel. I think he's got a lot of engaged, professionals around him, and they're probably pushing policies he doesn't necessarily even know about. Like, because you telling me that Biden is sitting there talking about AI regulation at 81 years old. You can't be. He doesn't even understand what this is.
But it's not Biden that's coming up with the policies, right?
Exactly.
I mean, at the end of the day, he's a figurehead. Do you think Trump is sitting behind his spreadsheet?
I think Trump is getting donations, and he's thinking, whatever you want me to say, I'll do. So I think he got donations. He got donations from...
He's tactical.
He's tactical. He got donations from Ackman. He got donations from Elon. Now he's like, I'm pro EV. And he got donations from Silicon Valley.
He doesn't have integrity.
Exactly.
He doesn't have integrity.
He's easily bought.
But the thing is, if someone's easily bought, then like, what's to stop them from like playing into foreign interests? What's 100%. To stop them? Like, if you're corruptible, you're corruptible, right? And it's like, where does the buck stop? And that for me is like a very worrying sign, a very troubling sign. I've lived in lots of different countries which didn't have as strong democratic systems. And you see what happens when people with power can be persuaded to act in the interest of groups who can pay the highest price. It's very scary. And I think, we reached this moment in time where people were really excited about redistributing power to historically marginalized groups, members of the global majority. And I think tech is really having an identity crisis in terms of what it represents to wider society. I'm not talking about what it represents to institutional investors. I'm not talking about what it represents to shareholders. I'm talking about what it represents to end users of these software products, end users of these crypto wallets that are being built, speculative investors in the crypto exchanges that they're promoting. Because they're selling a story to the ordinary individual, like the people that listen to this show, that they're on a mission to make the world a better place. And for a lot of people, making that world a better place is about creating positive impact, whether that's in specific social groups, whether that's in the longevity of our planet, the environment, whatever it is, whether it's about the purchasing power they have available of the money that they take home. And what I find really confusing is Trump does not represent the majority of people's best interest in terms of the global majority. He's literally gone on Twitter calling brown people, SHIT heads or whatever. He represents the interests of the highest bidder, and the highest bidder is typically an institution or an individual of huge wealth that owns multiple institutions. And I think this is the disconnect for me. It's like, who are you really, big tech? Like, are you the people that are on a mission to make the world a better place for the end users of your products? Or is that all just a lie for you to, sell the stocks in the secondary markets and raise the funds and this, that, and the other? At the end of the day, every market needs to be regulated. I graduated in the credit crunch, and we saw what happened when things like credit default swaps and contracts and stuff weren't regulated and everything goes bust. And who really lost out? How many people went to jail?
Yeah, no one did.
But how many people lost their homes?
Absolutely.
Do you see what I'm saying? Yeah. And the thing about crypto is, at the moment, crypto isn't really benefiting that end user. It's not really helping to close the gap between the richest and the poorest, and that gap is increasingly widening. So I don't know, like it feels like we as individuals also need to stop romanticizing the dream of tech and the dream of startup land, because we're seeing that a lot of investors are just in it for the money for themselves, and everything else is window dressing. You know what I mean?
I agree.
And at the end of the day, we know that people are raising funds, whether you're early stage or late stage, to eventually get some kind of higher return. And the people that often lose out are the founders and the startup employees who sacrifice social lives, sacrifice personal relationships, burn themselves out in the quest for a dream that has like a 0.01% chance of actually coming to life, but which VCs convince you are worth it. Meanwhile, VCs are leveraging the debt that they're sitting on, or leveraging the capital that they're sitting on.
Let's be fair. No one's pointing a gun to your head and saying, go to a VC.
No,
a lot of us are walking into those rooms saying, sign me up for that lottery ticket.
But do you think that VC needs to be reassessed in terms of its overall value to society, right? Venture capital existed for people to develop projects and products that otherwise wouldn't happen, right? It was very much mid-century, end of the war. How do we keep doing these big
I think
moonshot
VC
things?
is flawed, but when I compare VC to the rest of the economy, I still think they're pretty much doing the better work. If you compare that to private equity, the people that own McDonald's, Coca-Cola, in comparison to that sort of capitalism, I think VCs are at least trying to do something new. But they are flawed. Yeah. There's kinks in the system that need to be worked out 100%, and they need to invest in other founders who don't look like the minority. Yeah. You get what I'm saying? So I'm for reform in that sense. But
this narrative feels like Trump is better for startups, and I can't say that he is?
I don't know, and I don't even if Trump was absolutely better for startups, it doesn't justify voting for him, because you could say like, okay, what's more important? If your daughter or gets raped and she can't have an abortion, she has to go across state lines. I don't care what startups are doing in that situation. Do you get what I'm saying? So it's not all about startups, but I guess from their perspective, they were trying to rationalize it, and I wanted to understand and not strawman their position. But one thing I would say is that even if their concerns were legitimate, I think we do need reforming government in the sense that there's too many, I'm going to keep it real, old people and people who don't know what they're talking about. You can't tell me there's people in government that are smart.
What is Facebook? Do you
This is
remember
what I'm saying. It's embarrassing. Because someone like me and you could sit around and say, actually, you know what? There needs to be sensible regulation on crypto and AI, and probably we could hash it out and talk to other industry leaders and figure out something that makes sense. Do I believe that 80-year-old, and I love him, Bernie's going to figure that one out? I don't think he is. Do I think 8-year-old Biden is going to figure it out? I don't think he is.
No.
I wouldn't even want Trump doing it, because Trump is going to be so beholden to their interests. He can be like, do whatever you want, guys. That's not the answer either. So yeah, it's difficult, but it's just interesting watching tech pivot completely to Trump. And actually, I would credit probably the All In podcast for definitely like helping that narrative, because obviously you had Sachs there, and then I think even Jama during the show has become much more
Sachs
pro.
has always been questionable.
He's always been questionable. I mean, he's not questionable. He's always been a right wing guy.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Him
but
and
Chamath,
Peter Thiel with their like Mein Kampf book they released during college.
Diversity Myth or whatever it was called, right? And then Chamath was always kind of like the enlightened centrist type guy, and then he's now become Trump adjacent. He's donated to Trump, and I listen to the show frequently, and
if
I
you
can
can't
tell,
beat him.
join them, yeah. So that has definitely like made people be brave and come out and say, okay, I'm for Trump. And then I think also the pendulum swung from obviously George Floyd, post George Floyd, and I think a lot of people were having to keep quiet when they didn't agree with what was going on, and now the pendulum swung the other way, and it feels like people on our side of the aisle are basically now feeling like, I don't want to speak up, because now it's like it's not the cool thing anymore, and no one wants to hear this, and nobody cares about DEI. So I don't know if it is for this episode, but we were going to talk about Microsoft basically banning DEI, and maybe we'll talk about that later. But not banning DEI, but scaling back on DEI. But it's just a different environment now. We're in a whole different world.
Yeah, well, I think the risks perhaps feel higher because we have such an unstable character who's inciting a lot of violence. Like, people don't want to get shot. People don't want their loved ones to get shot. And it's a very real threat. And it maybe felt less real in 2020.
You're saying they're scared, so they're going for Trump out of fear for their lives.
I think so.
Seriously, I'm interesting.
Yeah.
I think it's more fear of the pocketbook getting empty. I think it's pure money. Yeah, I don't think the people are. I think they're thinking, yo, where's my money at?
So who are the black celebs that are surprisingly pro Mr. Orange?
So this is actually not a new thing. Lil Wayne actually came out in favor of Trump last time, but Trump then pardoned him.
Okay.
Yeah, so Trump has presidential pardon powers when he's the president, so he pardoned him. But this time around, we had Amber Rose, who doesn't identify as black, but she obviously is a woman of color. She spoke at the Republican National Convention, came out basically saying Trump's not racist. I'm where I belong. Amber Rose, came to prominence as Kanye West's girlfriend, Wiz Khalifa's, the mother of his kids. Then she did the slut walk. Avowed feminist, trying to change narratives on how women are perceived and women's behavior, the unfair
and now she's
disparity.
on the side of a pussy grabber.
Now she's on the side of done by the pussy. Yeah.
Self-proclaimed pussy grabber. Interesting.
Yeah, I just think we've just made too many people who haven't got the intellect to be famous. I'm gonna keep it real, because I think let's keep it real. That's what it is. Because some people are bamboozled by, inflation was a bit lower under Trump, therefore Trump's the greatest.
Yeah, people aren't fact-checking. People aren't fact-checking.
I'm going to keep it real.
People aren't reading.
And then apparently 50 Cent was rumoured to appear at the RNC. I don't know if he has.
What?
Yeah, so obviously when Trump survived the assassination attempt, 50 at his concert was playing Mini Men and had a picture of Trump with his head surgically attached to 50 Cent's body. You know the old album cover?
Yes.
Yeah, so obviously the lyrics are Many Men Wish Death Upon Me. And it's a song about how 50 Cent survived the gunshot attempt in it. So
9 bullets.
I think 50's come out. He's come out and said some things that are actually quite racist, in the sense that like he's like Trump, almost like Trump's the real first black president. He's a felon. He's been shot. It's so problematic. It's so problematic. It's stupid.
We need some. You know what? There are some black people that Trump can take. He can take Diddy.
Go.
Do you know what? Take him.
The Diddler can go.
He can take O.J. Simpson posthumously. There are a few black people where it's fine, but I don't want to see any of like the stars of like my adolescence coming out on his side because of just the horrible things that he said.
A lot of celebrities and black celebrities are low-key Republicans, just purely on attacks. They're just not coming out and saying it. Basically, there's a phenomenon in the UK called shy Tories, which is people who on polls will say I'm not voting Tory or Conservative, but then up in an election it's like, hold on, the Conservatives have much more votes. That 1000% exists within the black community, especially amongst celebrities who are mega wealthy. But Obama, like Romney,
what would you do if you found out I'm like anti-immigration? and actually secretly hate women.
That's a great con. It's a long con. So yeah, apart from all that depressing news, more depressing news actually in the celebrity world. So the rapper Stormzy, UK rapper Stormzy.
Yes. Big fan.
He's done a lot of great work actually. He's got a lot of scholarships for like black kids to go to Oxford and Cambridge.
He's always hanging around Mitchum's ends and like doing bits as well.
He's built like a community centre as well. So
and he's got a house party in Soho.
Yeah, he's got a venue that looks like a house. It's like a house party basically. I really want
to check that out.
So he was with the presenter Maya Jama for like a couple of years. Then they split up for 5. I think they were together for 5 years. Split up for 5 years. Then they said, let's try and make it work because obviously we really love each other. Now they've announced on Shade Borough that we ain't made it work. People are saying the whole spin the block, go back to the ex thing. This is, you broke up for a reason, basically. What's your thoughts on people going back to exes?
Bennifer?
That flopped as well, exactly.
Oh, did it?
Yes, they're divorcing. You didn't know about that. So you actually brought that up as a case for yourself, as a like, yo, the reverse case. Nah, man. Shout out to Ben Affleck, man. And Jennifer Lopez, they'll find love eventually one day. Yeah, so they're not working out either. What is it about people trying to rekindle those old romances and it just doesn't really work out?
Do you know, it's so interesting because I was listening to like my favorite like meditation teacher recently, Corey Mascara, and he was saying how there's this thing that we do in terms of like basically desire, where it's like, let's say you're in point A and you used to be in point B. From point A, point B looks so desirable. You're like, oh God, if I was just back in point B, I'd be so much happier. You know, we put rose-tinted glasses on the past. So we do the work to get closer and closer to point B. But the minute we're closer to point B than point A, we start looking back on point A and you know what? Point A wasn't that bad. Now that I'm like kind of close to point B, but it's taking a bit of effort to get there, I feel like I was actually happier in point A. And then suddenly you find yourself making the moves to get back to that point. And really, neither of those points is perfect because you're not perfect, right? And until you actually like confront what's wrong in yourself, you're never going to be happy in either of those things. And I think that happens with a lot of relationships. If I think of most of the relationships I've been in, of course, when a relationship ends, you're projecting everything onto the other person. Like they were this, they were that, they were that. You're too vulnerable in that moment and your ego is protecting you to see what you actually did wrong. And then over the long arc of time, you're like, I was a monster, or like I was really annoying. And I think a similar thing happens when people return to their exes. You know, it's very easy to polish a turd or apply rose-tinted glasses and kind of go, nostalgia, I'll be better with them. But then you're back in the reality of it. And if you haven't gone on the journey of fixing what was broken in the first place, whether it was your habits, your routines, your communication tools, aren't you just going to fall back into the same old patterns?
Absolutely.
That's my theory. What do you think?
I think
Has it ever happened for you? Has it worked for you? Okay.
I've only ever had two serious relationships in my life, and I'm in one of them right now. So no going back for me. I think you just change, and there's a reason why you break up. You're just not that, there's unless you have done the work, and both of you have done the work, so that you are fundamentally the same but also different. To retackle the relationship, it's just not gonna work. I don't see it. It's a nostalgic look back and say, oh, things were better then. Let me go back to that person. It's like you've grown, you've changed. Like it's just. No.
And even if you haven't changed, right? Because a lot of people don't necessarily always change. Like fundamentally, they're the same character. I think you end up in a dynamic that's like dysfunctional in some way. And like, why did you break up? Because that dynamic was no longer serving both of you or one of you. If you come back to each other, you just continue to operate in that same level of dysfunction. And you can become attached to dysfunctional relationships, right? But do you want that?
I wanted to ask you, you mentioned Bennifer.
Yes.
You just reminded me now, we'll talk about it quickly, of like J-Lo and like how much flack I've seen her catch on social media. Her, and then also I think Justin Timberlake, which probably is more justified.
This is gonna ruin the tour.
Did you catch that one, did you?
That.
What I'm saying is that like there seems to be this backlash against these sort of millennial celebrities who at the time were like, lauded and
super
worshipped. And now all of a sudden it's like this generation ain't feeling either of the two, and they're like,
I know.
There's a lot of bad stories about
harsh.
them. What do you feel about that?
I think, the standards have changed. The standards by which we judge celebrities have changed. There's like a certain level of self-awareness that we expect of them. And I think, I've been reading about some of the criticism leveled against J-Lo. Was it Refinery 29 or The Cut? I can't remember. And there are certain things about J-Lo which have been integral to her personal brand that people have questioned. Like the fact that she always like drops the Bronx as a way to feel appealable. Where people from the Bronx are like, girl, you ain't been in the Bronx in a hot minute.
We don't know you.
And then apparently she also like used this term which like Latinx folks actually use to refer to black members of the Latinx community. And she used it in reference to herself. And in a community that faces colorism, people are like, you can't do that because you're clearly not like a black Latinx person. And so I found that really interesting, like seeing that. And the person writing it was like, I do actually genuinely still love J-Lo for what she did in terms of representation. She went from a dancer on Living Color to like a international Grammy Award winning artist, not to mention all the style moments. Everyone remembers that Versace dress. The plunge.
That actually was the invention of Google Images. Do you know that? So that award show, I think it was the Grammys.
Yeah.
So many people were searching for J-Lo dress that an engineer at Google was like, we need to create
Google
Images.
That is a cultural icon.
They need to cut a check for that.
But then, in times where the conversation was around the suffering in the world, she released that. What was that thing that flopped on Apple TV? Like,
oh my days,
My Love or something.
She did 2 or 3 projects where it
the
was
wedding
kind of like
story, the love story. I don't even
there was 2 or 3 projects where it was kind of like autobiographical, but also she was playing herself, and also it was really weird.
I think people just were like, this is way too navel gazing for a person 100%. Of your level of celebrity in the context of what's happening in the world right now. So you know what, I feel like sometimes as a woman in the media, you can never quite win. And so my perspective on this is I'm Team J-Lo. I'm still Team J-Lo despite it all. And she might have released some content at the wrong time, but sometimes you don't have control over that.
Yeah. Now, shout out to J-Lo. I got nothing against
Justin Timberlake.
Okay, here we go. Do
you know what? One of the first concerts I went to as a teenager was Justin Timberlake at the Millennium Dome. And when I tell you, I spent a whole day getting ready for that.
Right.
Me and my friends, literally, we were like, 13 or something, had to be pulled out the VIP section by security because they're like, you don't have VIP bands. We're like, Justin. But when he broke out of NSYNC and that album, come on, that album was fire. Neptune's production. Mm-hmm. But, he's had a few infidelity things come out in the press.
It was the Britney thing that really got people against him.
And then
the whole Britney thing, and just like whole Cry Me River, which had to
he made her abort a baby that she didn't want to.
I didn't even know all that, but I just know that like even even the whole Cry Me River, that song, the narrative was that she did him wrong, she was the bad person, and I don't think that was completely accurate.
Gaslit her. You tell me. So he gaslit her through like a friggin' best-selling track. When in reality, she didn't have the power in that relationship. And actually, like I said, she wanted to keep a pregnancy that happened in that relationship, and he forced her to abort it. I mean, that was a very weird time in celebrity culture. People were asking like celebrity couples when they were going to lose their virginity. Like the media had no boundaries. Like this is just so poof. But I think the thing that really messed with him was that when he was busted for drink driving, and he had been seen multiple times by that police officer. Here's what's crazy. Some members of the public felt that the cop should have let him off, that he was too much of a goody two-shoes junior cop, green cop. But he was like, I saw him multiple times. I told him to go home. He didn't go home. But it was, to your point, the fact that he said, this is going to ruin the tour. And it's like, bruh, you could have killed someone.
Yeah, I know. And he was high off his mind. Like he had multiple drugs and whatever.
Someone help him.
Yeah, he's struggling. Anyway, we'll leave it there, man. Thank you for listening to the comeback episode of Techish.
Come back, kids.
Thank you for waiting. We'll be back next week.
See you soon.
Peace. This is going to ruin the tour, man.